Giovanna Fletcher has become something of a national treasure. Not only is she the host of the hugely successful Happy Mum, Happy Baby podcast, she's also a prolific author, presenter, and former winner of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Now, as she prepares to launch a new fashion collection with outdoor brand Regatta, she joins me to talk parenting, being a working mum, and how she juggles it all. Gee, welcome.
Hi.
What an honour to have you here.
I mean, I feel honoured because you're here. You're 2 weeks from giving birth. I mean, you know.
Anything can happen.
And that really excites me.
Good,
Yeah.
because I need you to catch if anything happens.
I mean, in another lifetime, I feel like I would have been a midwife.
Would you?
Yeah.
Actually, I
yeah.
have a strong inclination to become a doula later on. Another chat for another day.
Yeah, okay. Bring us back on topic.
Welcome. Let's talk about your career. Because
Yes.
as I mentioned, it's been prolific. It is prolific. You do so much in so many different spaces. Where did you start? How did your what did you think you'd do? And did it evolve that way?
Yeah, so I started acting. I went to Sylvia Young Theatre School from the age of 13. Although before that, as a kid, I had really bad hearing difficulties. And, you know, I was badly bullied. But those two things aren't linked, I guess. But I used to go off in my own world quite a lot. And so then when we moved when I was 9, I found this outlet of being on stage and characters. And it's actually, so when I was being bullied before, I'd go off around the field and create little stories in my head and sing songs to myself, and it was just something that I did for me. But actually moving meant that could become something that I did outward, and I just absolutely loved it. So I went to Sylvia's for years, then did an acting degree, and I always thought that is what I would do. And I mean, you know, the recession hit, the parts weren't filtering down the chain as they usually would, and I found myself kind of just being not doing what I wanted to do. You know, I'd do all the chaperoning. I'd worked in a gym on a bar. I'd worked in loads of different places. So I started working for a magazine doing their book reviews.
Oh, right.
And I met...
Were you always a prolific reader? I feel like the word prolific is going to come up a lot with you.
Yeah, I loved reading.
Yeah.
It would be that thing where, you know, if I was on the tube, I'd be with book, going down the escalator or going to the side. If I got off the tube, I'd be there waiting to get to the end of the chapter before I carried on my journey.
Love that.
I always had my head in the book. But I think it was always, Tom would always say you should write. And I'd be like, no, I went to drama school and pretended to be a penguin. That's something that someone who's gone to Oxford or Cambridge does, not me, you know. And
good, so imposter syndrome's real for everyone.
Oh, for everyone,
Great.
Absolutely. But I was doing these book reviews and I got to meet various authors and stuff along the way. And I met Dorothy Coombson, who I was a massive fan of. And she said to me, so many people when they find out that she's an author say, I'd love to write a book. And her thing was always, we'll just do it.
Right,
because unless you do, you don't know whether you'd have the skill set, you don't know if you'd like it. Yeah. Because it's quite an isolating experience. You know, you create the world. And so many times I think writing the books that I do, I've created a world that I need. So when I've created the friendships and those bonds and stuff that I have been, when you're writing books, when you've just had a baby and stuff and you are feeling so isolated, it's incredible what that does. And actually, thinking about it, it links back to when I was 8 or 9 and creating friends and stuff that I needed. And I'm still doing that now in my fiction. So after being given a little bit of a kick up the butt from Dorothy.
Right.
Yeah, I was a bit like, why am I stopping myself doing it? Why don't I just sit down and, see what happens? And the first book happened and, it took a lot of hard work, but it was there.
Was that Happy Mum, Happy Baby?
No, that was Billy and Me. So I started with fiction.
Fiction.
I think I wrote 4 or 5 fiction books before going to non-fiction. So I'm now on my 13th. So the Happy Mum, Happy Baby came after going on loads of book tours and doing, book signings and stuff. And people were just saying to me, have you ever thought about writing a book about motherhood? And I'd read all the books before Buzz came along. Yeah, I just thought it would really help me to study up. I'm quite a studious person, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do the right thing.
Well, there's no manual, but actually there's other resources.
Well, there's so many manuals out there. That's the problem. And so you read them all and the baby arrives and they haven't read a single one. So they don't know. It's all on you. And nothing works because you're there going, but the book said you'd be doing this and you're not. So I was a bit hesitant to actually add to that. And then I realised that actually if I was going to add to that space, I wanted it to be completely honest. And that went down so well. It was so emotional, the book tour for that. And then I just wanted that conversation to continue, which is why the podcast was born.
And what an amazing space to be such a dominant force in.
Yeah.
Now, with the podcast, obviously, it's not as filtered as a book. You're not editing bits. How do you keep a semblance of your private life private? Obviously, you're, I guess, sharing moments about your children that they might, down the line, maybe you wouldn't want to have shared, but in the moment you're being authentic and true.
Yeah.
So how do you juggle that?
I think when they were children, so Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the book was my experience. And I feel like that was my experience as a mum. So rather than sort of talking negatively about my kids, it was me as a mum.
Yeah.
And actually, with the podcast, I invite other people on to share their experiences. So it's not actually as my children are doing this. And actually, as they've got older, I'm much more aware of them and their identity and their how they might feel if they were to hear certain things. And I think there's a different thing mentally that you have to kind of filter through. So it's not that I'm holding back. It's just that I'll give things from my take and my experience and not necessarily shine a massive light on them.
Same with, I guess, social media.
Yeah.
How do you juggle that? Because I think a lot of new mums, babies that are a bit different, showing an image of a baby is quite different to a toddler who might not want that when they look back and as they get older. So how do you juggle that?
I trust my instincts on it.
Really?
Me and Tom have always said, if anything feels wrong or you're questioning it, trust that.
Yeah.
It's not right.
Back to your podcast. So you obviously interview amazing and varied guests. Is there anything that really resonates or had a big impact on you yourself?
There have been so many different, and to be honest, I think the ones that really hit me the most are probably the ones around loss, because I think I always feel so honoured that those parents are there sharing their stories with me. They feel that's a safe space for them to open up, and I follow their lead, and it always feels like such a special thing to be able to have that and to honour their baby. Having Ashley Kane and Sophia Vorigi on after Azalea died was it felt like we were celebrating Azalea and whilst at the same time raising awareness. I think things like that are always hard-hitting but give you a sense of why it's so important. Anything on maternal mental health does the same thing. And actually I think with things like maternal mental health, I think you can hear something years afterwards and it be healing in some way.
Absolutely.
It's really weird, isn't it? Like you can be so out of it. You can be living your best life again.
Yeah.
And it's like that, you almost go, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
I didn't realise I was going through it like
I
was.
Yeah, and you give yourself that almost validation and it's almost that kind of feeling of going, I'm so sorry. To yourself, and there's something really healing about it. I'm not bored yet. We're so many years in, and I just love the different conversations. Yeah, because I think it's those constant thing of reminding yourself, no one knows what they're doing. No one's got it down. We're all making it up, and when you think you know what you're doing, that's dangerous because something's about to flip. Something is about to completely change.
Or the next child doesn't go that way at all. You're like, what? I thought if you did it this way, you did that, but that isn't how it works.
That's what I always love about parents who go from 1 to 2, and their first child's an absolute dream, and they're like, I've
all
got
the
this
number
down.
ones are dreams. Number 2.
Oh my God, it was a fluke.
But number 3, it could be anything, and that's my big fear.
My number 3 was a little love
dream,
love bug.
We're going for dream.
Mama, just absolute
Chill.
dream. Yeah.
My number 2 is wild.
I think number 2s are. I think it's like they come out with their elbows ready.
Totally. And they've got to sell
They're a neck sale.
Yeah, absolutely. Has anything, like from your perception, changed, or have you seen the positive changes from when you started the podcast to now? Like, in terms of mental health or, I don't know, postnatal care, whatever. Have you seen good progress?
Yeah, I think there's a massive shift. There's a massive shift in the dialogue that's out there, the fact that we're able to talk about things. I can remember I think it was the second year of doing the podcast, research had come out and it showed that the leading cause of death in new mums was suicide. And that just kind of made us, Happy Mum, Happy Baby, kind of go, we have to keep driving this. We have to keep making sure that is out there. I remember doing something years ago, it would have been about 6 years ago, And we were talking as a group. It was something like an ITV daytime show. We were talking as a group about postnatal care, and someone was saying how her midwife, she was like, it's like she just wanted me to say that I was struggling. And I thought, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you're seeing that as almost an attack on you, actually, whereas really that midwife has to make sure you are okay. And actually, I think that is the shift that still has to happen. Like when I gave birth, I didn't realise that the midwife coming over and the healthcare visitor, they are there to help you.
I know.
I thought they were literally there to assess me and to see if I was right to be a mum. Otherwise, they'd be leaving my baby. No, that's literally why. Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not trying to cause problem. They're trying to help.
Help you.
Yes.
Yeah, so we need to lean on that more and more. So that's why I think it's so important that the more conversations about maternal mental health that are out there, the better. All mums, I believe, actually want to share their experience.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like once that door is open, you can talk to any mum.
Yeah.
You literally can. There's always going to be something. And I think if you realise that there are certain things that you can do differently, but that works for the other person. And I think that's one thing that we've really tried with the podcast is to take away the judgment. Listen to this person's story in its entirety. Take away the judgment and realise that they're doing the best for them.
Yeah. And it doesn't affect you how they do it.
No.
Doesn't matter. Oh, let's move on to, I don't know, the Princess of Wales.
Okay.
What was that like? I bet, was she talking about all the chaos and mess, or was hers a bit more?
Do you know what? When I first met her, we were at a kids' play centre because we were launching one of her big survey, and I'd said something along the lines of, "Gosh, I'm glad I didn't bring my three, said be feral." She was like, "Oh, exactly."
Really?
Exactly
No way.
Yeah. I think we all have that thing of, if I brought my kids here, what would they do?
I don't know. I've seen them sit there good as gold for long periods of time.
Not mine.
Yeah, you've never seen mine. But I'm like, how? They're still kids. I don't care if they're royal kids. Kids are kids.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
They must be bribed to the hilt. Meeting her, interviewing her, chatting to her, being part of, her work. Did that help your career, change your career, impact your career?
It was incredible, like seeing her world and what that's like. So even, it came out on the Saturday, but on the Thursday there was a royal, what are they called? The royal reporters were invited to Kensington Palace to listen. So they weren't being sent away with it. They weren't being given a link. They were allowed to come in. Yeah, phones taken away, allowed to come in, make notes so that they could write for the next day that it was going to be up on Saturday. And they were listening, because she's talking about her work and everything. And they were like, yeah, this is interesting. And then all of a sudden it switches and she's talking about her personal experience, about her grandmother, about hypnobirthing. And the vibe in the room changed. You had these, older men suddenly going, "Hypno, what did she say?" And there was this frantic desire to kind of get the information out.
What a scoop.
And it was fascinating to see what that is, though. There is that almost that desire. It's just a desire, isn't it, to kind of get that stuff out there. And I can remember afterwards being introduced to them as the interviewer. And one of them literally went, "I'm sorry, who is she?" It's almost like, why did she get this scoop? Because we're here every week,
But wow, you must have made her feel so comfortable.
But it's like we said, it's that mum to mum thing.
Yeah.
When you sit down with a mum or another parent or another carer, like you get each other. You get that sense of responsibility, and you have that common ground.
Wow. Scoop. Right. I'm going to get a scoop now.
Okay.
Do you remember when you were on and won I'm a Celebrity? Does that feel like a different world, a different life?
It does, but also because we're off the back of COVID. Like I'm pretty sure that when I went in, you couldn't mix with your family. So to be able to go in, I can't hug my mum, but here I am with Shane Ritchie and Vernon Kay. Okay, I'll hang out with those for a little while.
Right, yeah. So that's quite nice. You've got a bit of contact.
Well, to kind of, we'd gone off along for months of just being with our immediate family. So to actually be out, have these other conversations with other people, there was definitely a massive sense of freedom within that.
So was that kind of your main takeaway from the show? Or was there anything else that was like awesome or great or empowering or made you feel like, I didn't know I could put myself in a situation like that and,
I think it made me realise how much we are accessible all the time. And it's made me push back on that a lot.
Really?
Yeah, because everyone can always get to you. You feel guilty if you're not answering back on an email, on a WhatsApp, on a phone, whatever it is. You can be on constantly and actually not having that. And that's what I find really interesting coming out of it, people being like, but you filmed 24 hours a day. It's like, yeah, but not really. Do you know what I mean? You
weren't having to talk to anyone.
It wasn't intrusive.
Yes, absolutely.
Actually, where what's happening in our phones every day, that demand, that's more intrusive.
Which is so true. How do you, G, navigate school WhatsApp groups and that constant communication and barrage of information and because it's a lot and people get overwhelmed by it. You have a busy career.
I love the meme that's going on at the moment
what's
saying
that
I've quit my full-time job so I can be on emails full-time, school emails.
It's a bit like that.
Yeah.
With this, because back in when we went to school, I guess they sent out like a note in
Little
your bag.
slips.
Yeah, or like you had to call in if there was a problem. Now it's like constant.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that?
Firstly, I mute the groups.
Do you?
Yes. Just because then I know that they're there.
Yeah, and you can actively check.
Yes. The second thing is to make sure that Tom is on all the groups.
I know, but to be honest, it ain't your job. It's everyone's job. It's the parents' job.
Yeah. So I'm like, because also I'm away sometimes. So Tom needs to know things.
When swimming is, or to bring in this for that.
Yeah. Oh. You know what? I love a WhatsApp group, but we've also got, I guess there's only less than 20 people in each of their class. So it is a smaller pool. But I make sure that I'm definitely not one of the mums when someone says, oh, so-and-so's lost something.
You don't need to.
I don't answer back.
Not here.
It's not because I've stolen it. It's just
promise.
Not here.
Yeah. If you hear from me, it's because I have it. That's all you need. Right. So you kind of tactfully get involved when you need to.
I do see the joy in them and I see their use. And I know that I have definitely lent on them.
Oh my God. We've talked about this a bit before, or maybe but you obviously have 3 boys with Tom. You've kind of alluded they're all a bit different. How do you approach all of them differently? And is that kind of a considered discussion and plan that you and Tom have come up with? Or again, is it all gut feel and intuition?
It's a learning. It's a learning. I think you very quickly realise what sort of tactics or managerial skills you might use on one
what works for one and doesn't for another.
Absolutely not. And I've known from day one of having a second child that I would have to figure out different ways. Because like we were saying before, you can have one and think you know what you're doing to a certain extent, and then another one comes along and you realise actually this is a whole other different type of parenting because this child is different. And also I think we're always fascinated by the fact that everyone is different, but also because we always say, but they're in the same environment, but they're not. Because your first child has had you and totally you. Your second child
and he's had maybe your anxiety, your stress, your worry, your concern. Whereas maybe you go into the second one more calm, or you're not as your vibe, happy mum, happy baby. Maybe the first time you're not so happy, you're a bit on edge. I don't know, is your eldest the more sensitive?
Calm? Oh, absolutely. Our eldest is more sensitive, but so creative. Second is our nature explorer, loves being outdoors.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, and then our third is the love bug who just wishes he could marry me. So,
the way you approach all of this seems really level-headed, and obviously you're kind of the expert really on it, but there must have been challenges, and how have you faced them? Can you give any examples for those that feel like, oh, it's not so easy?
It's not easy at all. And that's what the podcast is all about. And that's what, even when I was sharing about parenting on Instagram early days, I would definitely let people know that I was not finding it easy.
Really good.
Yeah,
because it isn't.
Because of the white sheets and the smiles that had come before. And I just felt that didn't relate. I couldn't relate to that because why was it not like that for me? Why was I struggling so much? But it's about figuring out what is working and then persevering with it, or changing that if it's not. I think a big thing that we changed is, so in the mornings, bear in mind we have to leave home, well, we now leave at 7:30, but we were leaving at 7:45. So everyone has to be up, dressed.
Which is a harder task than that sounds.
It is, but what we were doing, so what we were doing though is we were saying, right, once you're up, you can have a little bit of TV before we leave. Great incentive. Well,
for a minute.
And then that turned into, okay, if you come downstairs, you can watch something while you're having your breakfast. And then everything gets a bit loosey-goosey and it's hectic getting out the door because no one actually wants to leave because look, we've still got 8 minutes of this episode, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So actually one thing that we did do is we just did a blanket ban of any TV in the mornings. Let's change the vibe completely. People get up, everyone gets up, and we all know all we have to do is get dressed, have breakfast, get out the door.
Yeah.
Because all the bags will be packed the night before.
All
of their uniform is out and prepped.
They can slide in, slide down the stairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's no other,
things to navigate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not doing 20 minutes of piano practice before school.
No, I chuck the spellings at them and they're in the car.
In the car.
You've got 20 minutes, go! Cram as much as you can and just think of 3.
So actually though, you do bring up a good point, which I think is one of modern day parenting's hardest thing to navigate, which is screen time. And they kind of have to be proficient on them. They use them in schools, it's part of learning, but equally it is such a problem, but also a really useful tool.
So we told our kids that they didn't work, like the iPads and stuff didn't work unless you're on a plane or in a car.
Yeah.
And that worked until COVID.
Yeah. And then
we're like, oh my God, you've got to do school lessons. Let's get you on the iPad. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
And now, they do Timetable Rock Stars on there and different things like that. And actually, we've just done something with the podcast with BBC Children's that's all about, they had a massive campaign called Screens, It's What's On Them That Counts. And that is so true. There's so many educational fun things out there that kids can watch and be absorbed by, looking at those watching habits, like what are they? So there are I feel like there are things that
you can
do. And
once they fall down that YouTube kids hole.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's indoors, but of course, outdoors. You mentioned that your middle is quite into nature and he's I guess, more actively inclined. You've obviously done the collaboration with Regatta. So how did that all come about and what do you do to foster more outdoorsiness?
Well, it's the 3rd collection now with Regatta. So we've had a big partnership and it's been incredible. When you just work with a brand and everything, it just clicks. It makes sense. I've always loved being outdoors. Like I said, as a kid, walking around the field, creating stories and stuff. I love being outside. And even actually, I realised very early on in motherhood that getting the kids out was so important because they just have this energy. Yeah. And actually, when you go out and they're with nature, it's so different. And I honestly believe that we're not meant to be inside as much as we are.
And there's that amazing, I think it might be a Swedish saying, but I'm obviously saying it in English, but it's there's no bad weather, there's only the wrong clothing for
yes.
it. So you have obviously filled that gap.
Yeah.
Because if you have all your wet weathers or whatever, then go out. It's when you're caught off guard that it's an unpleasant experience.
Yeah, exactly. So I love the idea of just chucking something on and getting outside. And Regatta are always amazing to work with. And there's the actual collection, there's a variety of things in there. So you've got things that you could wear out if you're going on a night out, like a nice the black puffer. Or there's things that you can literally just chuck on and do the school and then do the shop in and I'm going to go for a walk. So it's just so you're always prepared, water repellent or completely waterproof. It's a totally mixed bag. But for me, being outdoors is ridiculously important, going for long walks. I do 2 treks a year as well with Copperfield. I love getting out and getting a bit mucky.
Your mum and stuff must love it.
Yeah, they do. Everyone loves it. They come around, what are you wearing, Giovanna? Oh, it's the Alenda. And everyone tries, get it off, let me try it on.
I'll just take this off you. You've got too much of this stuff. How else do you like to stay fit and healthy? Obviously walking, outdoors, trekking. Yes. Anything else you do?
I haven't run for a while, but I went through a phase where I was running literally every other day. And then if I wasn't running, I was boxing. So I've got a punching bag in my office. Yeah, good. It's so good. And I'm always I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm having a really good time.
Boys, just give me a minute.
But they love it though. Yeah. And it really surprises me actually how I can remember growing up and seeing mum do Mr. Motivator on the TV and things like that. And it kind of sticks with you though, doesn't it?
It's important they see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the kids now, I don't mind if they go into my office and put on my punching bag, my gloves and have a little go. And they take it really, really seriously as well. It's just really, really, you definitely see how they take on board the things that you do.
Definitely. And also you can't tell them to do things. They have to see it.
Absolutely.
So exercise, healthy living. What about mental health? Did you do anything for that, for your own self-care?
I think running and walking for me, that is great for mental health. I think being out, it is that out in nature thing. And actually on the treks, because we do, where we go, usually the landscape is so vast, you just see so much of the world. And it makes you feel really insignificant in the best way possible. You just realise how big the world is, how small you are, and therefore how small your worries are. Yes. And there's nothing more grounding, I think, than that. So for me, I think I just want to do more of that with the kids. That's my big dream. But that definitely, in terms of mental health, being in nature, that is where things ease
And
up.
it's something everyone can access. It's like, it's free, just get out. That's what you have to do.
Exactly. I remember seeing years ago when the kids were, I think maybe I only had one, and I remember someone posting about, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get out or how frustrating that might seem to get out, and how things might fall apart or the meltdowns that might happen along the way. When you are out, it's a different ball game.
Absolutely.
There's that, as soon as they get that sense of freedom, like mine just come together like a little pack. Whereas if they're indoors, arms and legs everywhere, whereas get your wellies on, get your coat, we're out. And in the winter, what I do to really tempt them out is I have a flask of hot chocolate.
Oh, nice.
But on special days, I might put a little can of squirty cream in there as well. Yeah. So we'll find a little log somewhere.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So doing that.
It's good.
Okay, I could talk to you all day, but finally, to wrap up, do you have like a motto that you live by or anything that kind of, your kind of phrase or mantra or anything that you affirmation?
It used to be kill it with kindness. Because I think there's always a lot of noise and people always, you've got to kill it with kindness. But there's one that came up in Amman that I kind of say a lot, which is be more goat. Because mountain goats, when you're so you're trekking in Amman, be more goat. So you'd be trekking in Amman and finding things really, really difficult, and you turn around and there'd be this goat who was just kind of like finding things really, really easy. So I'm always kind of like channel the goat. The goat doesn't ponder about the same things that we do. They just do.
Be more goat. Thank you. Well, you are the greatest of all time. So thank you for joining us, G. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you very much.